All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig in a Pickle Crew Show with a little NFL playoff video. You know, everybody's got hopes this time of year that their team is going to win the Super Bowl. And yet, when you look really closely at all the contenders, and I look at 9 true Super Bowl contenders this year, they all have flaws. They all have reasons that they won't win the Super Bowl. And so let's do a video and talk about the flaws of the 9 best Super Bowl contenders that are out there right now in the NFL. All right, let's get into it. But first, we are brought to you by Pig in a Pickle. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week in both spots from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Pig in a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. And this video is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Check the link in the description. Use that promo code KRUEG, K-R-U-E-G, and they will match you up to your first $100. Should we start with the top to the bottom or the bottom to the top? All right, why don't we start from the back to the front, and we'll talk about some of these teams and what their relative weaknesses are. Now, let's start with the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins have so much speed. Mike McDaniel's a great offensive coach. They have speed that is incredibly difficult to match up with. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, adding the A&M kid, Achan, in the backfield, electric, Raheem Mostert. I mean, the Dolphins have a ton of speed, and they've got some really good defensive backs as well. So you look at Miami and you say, man, they could make it to the Super Bowl. They can outscore almost everybody in the NFL. Okay, so what is the Dolphins' weakness? They haven't won a postseason game since 2000. So we're talking about, you know, almost a quarter century since the last time the Dolphins won a playoff game. And they have built their record this year just crushing bad football teams. And they really haven't beaten a lot of good teams. They've played 5 teams with winning records this year, and they're 1-4. The only win they have all year against a team with a winning record was Dallas, the win over Dallas in Week 16. That was it. That was the only win over a 500-plus football team all year. A lot of these games against winning teams are not particularly close. The Ravens just routed them. 2 of their losses to winning teams were by 28 points. They lost 48-20 to Buffalo. And they face Buffalo again in Week 18. So they may lose again big to Buffalo. So that would be my concern with the Dolphins. And injuries. Bradley Chubb, done for the year. Jalen Phillips, done. So they've got 2 of their defensive ends that are hurt. They don't have great defensive depth. So to me, the Dolphins' concern is that they're a little banged up. They're not quite what they were at their peak this year on defense. And who have they beaten? You know, they've beaten a lot of bad teams. And when they play good teams, they typically lose. So I you know, Dolphins, I think, are really scary because they got a ton of speed, and you catch them on the right quarter of football, and they look like the best team going by far. But then you look at their season in its totality, I think the Dolphins are a year away. All right, let's move to the 8th team on my list, and that's the Detroit Lions. And the Detroit Lions are a great story. Jared Goff has been incredible. They have an amazing collection of weapons. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, the rookie tight end, I think is as good as any tight end in football. I mean, that's how good Laporta is. Jahmyr Gibbs is outstanding. You know, they've got some Montgomery. David Montgomery's a power back. They've got maybe the best offensive line in the game when you factor in age. Their offensive line's great, and it's young and in its prime. I mean, you're talking about Frank Ragnow at center, Taylor Decker at right tackle, Penei Sewell, I believe, at left tackle, and you've got, you know, 2 of the best young tackles in all of football. They have a dominating offensive line. Philly's considered to have the best offensive line. Dallas is a very, very good offensive line. I would say the Lions' offensive line is as good as anybody. Goff's playing at a very high level. He's playing with tremendous confidence. The team plays really, really hard. All right, this video is supposed to be about the weaknesses, why the Lions won't win the Super Bowl. They're not going to win the Super Bowl because of their defense. Their defense is coming on, and it's got potential to really be good in a year or two, but they're not there yet. Aiden Hutchinson is an excellent edge rusher, and he's a true blue chipper. He's really all by himself on that front line. I mean, there's three other guys there, but he doesn't have that guy up front next to him that has to be doubled, that makes you choose between, do you double Hutchinson or do you double this guy? You can double Hutchinson pretty consistently. So then you look at the Lions defensively according to the numbers. They're 15th in the league in total defense. That's yards. They're 23rd in the league in scoring defense. That's points allowed. So their pass defense has been really bad. 25th in the league in yards per game allowed through the air for the Lions. They're going to get back C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who's a tremendous safety and should make an impact. But this team lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Emmanuel Mosley to injuries earlier this year, and their defense on the back end is just not great. It's a try-hard defense. It's a well-schemed defense. Aaron Glenn's a terrific defensive coordinator, but they just don't have the horses. Now, a year from now, the Lions may be the preeminent team in the NFC. They're coming. There's no question. They've got the weapons on offense. They've got the line. Goff has emerged as a much better player than what Sean McVay thought he was in his final years with the Rams. But defensively, it's Hutchinson all by himself up front. Their linebackers try hard, but it's not a stellar group. Their pass defense is not great, and if they had a healthy Mosley and a healthy C.J. Gardner-Johnson, maybe you could make an argument the Lions could sneak in this year. But they're just not good on the back seven, not good enough to go to the Super Bowl, in my opinion. All right, let's move on to the next team. Let's go to the Cleveland Browns. The Browns are like the chic pick right now because they have had a renaissance under the veteran Joe Flacco. And Flacco is playing amazing football right now. So good that they're actually talking about a contract extension for Flacco. They paid Deshaun Watson, $230 million, 100% of it guaranteed. And now they're realizing that maybe that was not such a good decision. And Joe Flacco is actually maybe the better decision at this point to go with him. Obviously, Watson's hurt. That's why he's out. That's why they're going with Flacco. But to me, the Browns are really great defensively. Myles Garrett, stud. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, phenomenal. Denzel Ward in that secondary, really, really good. They're really good on all three levels of the defense. And Flacco's throwing it all over the place. He's piling up touchdowns. He's got good receivers, Amari Cooper. The Browns have a lot to like, and I could totally picture the Browns going to the Super Bowl, getting out of the AFC. But their run game since Nick Chubb went down has been inconsistent. They're leaning on Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt, and that's just not a stellar run game right there. And despite the fact that Flacco's had all kinds of passing yards, he's also thrown a lot of picks. There is no team in the NFL that has more giveaways than Cleveland. Cleveland's given the ball away 35 times this year. And the other thing is, Cleveland's never really won in the playoffs. Eventually that's going to change. The historical trends are just that. They're historical trends. But, man, this is a strong one. The last time the Browns made it past the divisional round of the playoffs was 1989. To put that in perspective, I was a freshman at Sacramento State in 1989. So it's been a while since the Browns got by the divisional round, and that's a historical trend that's hard to ignore. So the lack of run game, the giveaways, the Cleveland doesn't win in the playoffs, all indicators that they're probably not going to win the Super Bowl. All right, let's go to the next team. Let's go to the Philadelphia Eagles, the defending NFC champion Eagles. And the Eagles started off 10-1. They looked amazing. They had Jalen Hurts, all these weapons, the best offensive line, a defense that sacks the quarterback. They're 10-1. They're finding ways to win. Everybody's celebrating Sirianni as the coach of the year, Howie Roseman as the executive of the year. And then the bottom fell out. And the Niners beat him. And not only did they beat him, they kind of kept Hurts in the pocket. Then the Cowboys beat him. Then, the Eagles have struggled down the stretch. And they most recently got stunned at home by the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals beat them in Philly. So I just look at this Philly team. Their defense has regressed significantly from last year. Last year, they had Hargrave and a younger Fletcher Cox inside. Now Cox is a little bit more dinged up. He's a year older. They're leaning on Jordan Davis, who's woefully out of shape. Their pass rush this year has been good, but nothing close to what it was a year ago. I mean, the difference between their pass rush a year ago and what it is this year is night and day. And their pass defense is just bad. Not been good at all. They lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson. They're replacing him with guys like Blankenship. They've allowed the fifth most yards per game through the air in the entire league. And then offensively, they've been inconsistent. Hurts doesn't look like he's the same player. They're not in the same rhythm. They're two Hall of Fame offensive linemen are a year older and they're a little bit past their prime. Kelsey and Lane Johnson are both showing some signs of age. It's December and January football now, and they've played a lot of games. They look just a little gassed. They don't look like the same team on either side of the ball. Heck, when you're losing home games that you got to have to the Arizona Cardinals in Week 17, all is not right with the Philadelphia Eagles. So I just think that they've regressed. They're on defense, the game is about, rush the passer and play coverage. Their coverage isn't as tight, and their pass rush is not as great. They're leaning on, they drafted a lot of kids out of Georgia that aren't necessarily doing it for them. Nolan Smith, not playing a lot. Jordan Davis, not playing well. I mean, they've got, they're leaning on a lot of young players to step up into roles and man bigger roles than they did a year ago. And those young players are telling us they're not quite ready. So the Eagles, I think, are in a bad spot right now. They just don't seem like the same team. They've lost their swagger. They've lost their confidence. They don't seem like the same team or anything really close. They don't even seem like they're even close to the team that went to the Super Bowl last year. All right, let's move on to the Buffalo Bills. The Bills might not even make the playoffs. I mean, there's a possibility they don't make the playoffs at all. If they lose at Miami in Week 18 and Pittsburgh somehow beats Baltimore, Buffalo's out of the playoffs altogether, and they'll be watching this thing on television. And why are they in that spot? Because they've been an up-and-down team all season long. They have played some of the most disappointing football of any team in the NFL this year. They fired Ken Dorsey as their offensive coordinator. They lost 3 of 4 before their bye week. Now, since the bye week, they've played much better football. But when you look at the teams that have beaten them this year, they lost to New England. They lost to Denver. They lost to the Jets. I mean, Josh Allen has 8 career playoff games. He's only 4-4 in those games. He's a massive talent, but Buffalo has had injuries in their secondary. They've been up and down all year. You really don't know what you're going to get. They're going to have to venture out on the road, so they're not going to be able to take advantage of that awesome freezing home field advantage that they have in Western New York and in January. And I just think that they just look like a team that's probably a year away from. I think Josh Allen's going to win Super Bowls. I really do. I think all of you guys do as well. I just don't think it's going to be this year. And when you look at the fact they've lost to the Jets, the Pats, and the Broncos, and that Allen's 4-4 in playoff games, and they haven't really, they look great since the bye, but they didn't look good before the bye. They fired the OC. I don't know. There's just a lot of upheaval there. There's a lot of up and down. I see the Bills as a team that could have one very impressive playoff win and then just get smoked the next week. So I don't really have a lot of belief in the Buffalo Bills. Let's move on to the next team, the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys under Dak Prescott are only 2-4 in the playoffs. They don't typically win. Also, historically, we have not seen Dallas in the last quarter century plus get past the divisional round in the playoffs. I mean, the last time the Dallas Cowboys got past the divisional round in the playoffs, they had the same cast that Jimmy Johnson put together. Jimmy Johnson was just entered into the Cowboy, Ring of Honor or whatever. I mean, he's long since done. That was 1995. They beat the Steelers with Neil O'Donnell. They had Barry Switzer as their head coach the last time they got past the divisional round. They don't typically win in the playoffs. And not only that, they don't win on the road. They're 3-5 on the road this year. They're great at home, and if they can play at home, they're tough to beat. But 3-5 on the road. And then you look at the way the Niners consistently beat them and the way Buffalo ran on them. They don't stop the run. So to me, in the playoffs in cold weather, if you don't stop the run in January, you're going home. And they don't win in the playoffs anyway. They're a little bit of a bully team. If they get a big lead on you, they can turn that big lead into a monster lead. But they don't stop the run. And in the playoffs, in the NFC, you better be able to stop the run. I'm not even 100% sure if they get the Rams, they could beat the Rams. The Rams have Kyron Williams and a really good run game. I think the Rams could run it on them. I think Detroit could run it on them. I think the Rams are better. I think Detroit's better. To me, the Cowboys are a team that if you catch them on the right day, they look like world beaters, but they're not really a dominating Super Bowl contender. And I would say when you look at their 2-4 record under Dak in the playoffs, 3-5 record on the road, and their inability to stop the run, put a line through the Cowboys. All right, now we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. We're getting down to the Chiefs, the Niners, and the Ravens. And let's start with Kansas City. Kansas City has not been right all year. They're great on defense, lots of speed, Chris Jones up front, but they're just not a potent offensive team. Despite the presence of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, they're just a pretty mediocre offensive team. 6 losses this season are the most they've had since Mahomes, has been their quarterback. They're 9th in total offense. They're 12th in scoring offense. When he drops back to pass, he's looking for Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Sky Moore. I mean, he just doesn't. Kadarius Toney makes mistakes. They don't have Tyreek Hill anymore, and they don't have good receivers anymore. I mean, there's no doubt the Chiefs are going to draft some receivers in April or sign some in March. And then they're going to have to do something that they've never actually ever had to do since they've had Patrick Mahomes in town, and that's win playoff games on the road. They're going to have to go out on the road and win playoff games. The road to the Super Bowl does not run through, Arrowhead. And I don't know that the Chiefs can win on the road. I don't know that they've got a passing offense that can produce consistent points. I think the Chiefs are a team that is ripe for the picking this year. All right, let's move on to the Niners. The Niners are a great team. They absolutely are. They got a really good offense. They got a really good defense. They got a really strong special teams. They're a good football team all the way around. But there are some questions here. The 49er offensive line, despite the Pro Bowl, accolades and all the different guys that were recognized as either Pro Bowl starters or alternates, the Niners offensive line is just pretty ordinary. Trent Williams is awesome. He's the best left tackle in the game. Banks is a terrific young left guard. Brendel's about 280 pounds, not the most dominating center, despite the fact he's an efficient player. He was a Pro Bowl alternate. Right guard, Spencer Burford has struggled all year. Now they're going with John Feliciano. Right tackle, Colt McKivitz, great guy, and he's a Pro Bowl alternate because the Niners have put up great numbers, but there's some inconsistency there. He's allowed a lot of pressures, and he struggles against both speed rushers and power rushers, more against speed than power, but you can bull rush him and you can speed rush him. So I think the Niner offensive line is a major, major question. The other problem with the Niners is McCaffrey now heads into the postseason with a calf injury. If that lingers, that could be a problem. Is he healthy? Brock Purdy is 2-1 in the playoffs, but he lacks playoff experience. How's he going to play? And can the Niners late in the year stop the run? They've struggled at times to stop the run. Can they stop the run when the money's on the table? Can they stop the run in short yardage against some of the better teams? I think these are all reasonable questions for the 49ers. I love the 49ers' chances of going to Vegas and winning the Super Bowl, but the O-line's just okay. McCaffrey may not be 100% healthy. Purdy lacks a lot of playoff experience and has played an awful lot of football. I mean, the most games he ever played in college was 13. He's already played 18 games. He's going to have to play 21 to win the Super Bowl. So that's a tall ask. And then run defense and short yardage run defense, I think, is a major issue. So those are the Niners' questions. And then let's finish with the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens right now look like they're on top. They've got Lamar. He's the MVP probably. Their defense looks great. They just beat the Niners in Levi's. They just crushed the Miami Dolphins. But then you look a little closer at Baltimore and you realize that Lamar Jackson has not done well in the postseason. He's got 4 playoff starts. He's got 1 playoff win. He's thrown more interceptions and touchdown passes, and he's had a passer rating of less than 70 in the playoffs. The last time the Ravens were the number 1 seed and Jackson won the MVP was 2019. What happened that year? They got bounced in the divisional round. Then you look at their weapons. Who's running the ball? Justice Hill? Gus Edwards? Those aren't Super Bowl caliber running backs. I love Zay Flowers, but he's a rookie. The rest of those offensive weapons, Rashad Bateman, OBJ, Nelson Aguilar, I mean, they don't scare you. So they don't have great weapons. They get one guy on their front that's really scary in Matabuke. You can double him. Lamar hasn't played well in the playoffs, hasn't taken care of the ball in the playoffs, hasn't won playoff games, and their weapons are pretty ordinary. So there you go. And somebody would say, well, hey, how about the Rams? Are you going to throw the Rams in? I guess I could throw the Rams in as a 10th team. The Rams were life and death to beat the New York Giants last week. The New York Giants are a bad football team. The Rams defense is Aaron Donald, and I'll pay you $20 if you can name 3 other Ram defenders. It's a bunch of no-names. So they've got weapons and they've got Stafford. There's no question. They can score points, but they're not a great team. They've proven it all year. And they're not a Super Bowl caliber team. So there you go. Those are the top 10 Super Bowl contenders right there. Rams, Dolphins, Lions, Browns, Eagles, Bills, Cowboys, Chiefs, Niners, Ravens. I just outlined everybody's weakness. You can decide for yourself who you think is going to win it all. I think the Niners have a great shot. I'll take my chances with Brock Purdy and the 49ers, but I could see the Niners winning it. I could see the Ravens winning it. And I could even see somebody coming from off the pace, somebody like the Lions or the Browns, winning it. But I don't believe it's the year of the Chiefs. I don't believe it's the year of the Cowboys. I don't think Buffalo's getting it together. I don't see Philadelphia doing it. I don't think Miami can do it. And so we enter into January football with lots of questions and not a lot of answers. Should be a fun month. All right, thanks to Pig in a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Thanks to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring this video. Thanks to all you guys for supporting the Krug Show on YouTube.